Hello, my name is Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. And welcome back to another video where today we're going to be looking through some deadline dilemmas ahead of game week 5. It's not too far away. Obviously, the international break is a bit of a short one this time round, but we're hoping that we can help you with some of those queries that you've got ahead of the deadline.
Okay, so we're going to kick things off with a man who absolutely tore up game week 4. It's Heung Min Son, a hat-trick against Burnley, playing up top as well. No Richarlison in the side. So we're going to talk about him briefly and think a lot of people are looking to move him in ahead of the Sheffield United fixture this week. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, played really, really well in that game. Do you think he's someone to move to right now, or would you be a bit hesitant and think it's a little bit of a knee-jerk?
I think it is a little bit of a knee jerk. I think Maddison's probably more essential at this point, just given the fact that he's been so much consistently better over the first 4 or so game weeks, and he's sort of more central to everything Spurs do. There is obviously a possibility with Son and Spurs for him to play out on the left. It lessens when Richarlison's out and not playing because Son has to become that main striker. But for now, I think it's a little bit of a knee jerk. And you look from game week 8 onwards, I think game week 5, 6, and 7 will give you a much better indication over the medium to long term how good Son is actually going to be. It's all well and good having a hat trick in one game week, everyone moving to him, and then him being pushed out to left wing again. We can see over game week 5, 6, and 7 how well Son does. Going into game week 8, potentially if you're wild carding around then, that could be the perfect time to bring him in. So maybe I'd wait a couple of weeks or so and just see how Son does over the next couple.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's going to be an interesting one seeing if he does maintain that place up top. Obviously, Solomon, who came in for him out left, played really, really well and is probably creating a lot more chances than even Son does out there. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see with that Spurs lineup and how it looks going forward, especially for that Sheffield United game, which a lot of managers are looking to target. Moving on then, another player who everyone thought would do well, even Ben included, would do well in game week 4 is Nicholas Jackson. Obviously playing at home to Nottingham Forest, just coming off that goal against Luton. Was it a disappointment? Oh, is massive disappointment, Ben. Obviously, racking up XG, not converting chances. Would you be looking to sell him though at the moment, or would you be looking to keep him?
I wouldn't be looking to sell Nicholas Jackson right this moment. The next sort of 3 out of the next 4 fixtures are really, really nice, and that's enough time to get, a good enough sample size of days to work out whether he is underperforming or whether his finishing just is bad. I think he's been unlucky, but also he should have more returns than just the 1 goal so far. And yeah, for me, I think he's a hold for now. Yes, the XG is fantastic, which I think is now to get rid. Just because he's not finishing the chances, he's getting the chances. We'll just wait and see whether he becomes this year's Darwin or not.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think you've got to hold him for Bournemouth away. I think that's a really, really good fixture for Chelsea. And then after Villa, which I guess is not the easiest of fixtures, but Fulham away, Burnley away. Fulham have shown how many goals they've conceded already this season. So, yeah, for me, even as a non-owner, I'd be looking to keep him. If you have Sterling and Jackson, though, I think that's where I'd maybe think about removing one of them in that scenario if you're doubled up, just because I think their attack is not scoring that many goals. Even against Luton, they've only scored 3 there. So, yeah, I think if you're doubled up, I'd maybe look to move on one of them. If you are looking to move, what players to get? Here are 3 forwards that we think are potentially coming up into a good run. First up is Alexander Isak from Newcastle. Newcastle's fixtures turn really, really good now. They've faced 4 really difficult teams so far this season. And now they're looking a bit more spicy. Alexander Isak, Ben, potential minutes risk with Callum Wilson. Obviously, Wilson coming off the bench to score against Brighton at the end of the game there. Do you think that he is the first choice and Wilson will always be that sub choice whilst there's no Champions League?
I think whilst there's no Champions League is the key point to make here. Alexander Isak clearly is sort of number 1 in the striker position for Eddie Howe, but when Champions League does come into play, there's going to be rotation. We do know that with Newcastle's difficult Champions League group, but the immediate short-term fixtures here suggest that Isak could pick up quite a few points here. He's risen in price 0.2 as well, and the ownership is quite high as well. So I do anticipate Isak being a good asset to own. in the short term, I'd probably medium to long term look at sort of alternative options that are more secure in their minutes. But for now, I do think Isak is a great option to turn to if you are indeed looking at potentially selling someone like Jackson and you sort of had enough of the XG underperformance there.
Yeah, someone else as well that we haven't seen too much of so far this season, but 15 minutes and he's already got a goal. Gabriel Jesus in that Arsenal team. Obviously, a really good, really well taken goal against Man United at the death to make it 3-1. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think, obviously, we know last season he was really essential to unlocking the door for the other assets like Martinelli and Saka? Do you think that he has quite a big role to play in this team, or do you think Nketiah still gets minutes?
I think the minutes get shared a lot more evenly this season between Jesus and sort of Nketiah than they did last year, and especially with Jesus picking up a couple more injuries than he has done previously over the last sort of season or two. 7.9 million is a difficult price point as well for managers to get to from, say, a Nicholas Jackson or a João Pedro. And the Arsenal fixtures are quite tough over the short to medium term as well. So I maybe wouldn't be as keen on going to Jesus. He's only had 15 minutes, like you said. He's 7.9 million. He's just a bit more expensive than everyone else. And he's sort of 2.2% owned. He's really low owned. So if you're going with him, that's a high risk against someone who is fully fit, starting striker with a nice fixture run in Alexander Isak or a Nicholas Jackson. So I think the risk just right now is too high to go with Jesus. But by all means, I think when the fixtures do turn again for Arsenal, Jesus could be fully fit by then and really be starting 90 minutes every game. But for now, I think his minutes are going to be managed a little bit more carefully by Arteta because they don't want to risk a re-injury to a key player like Jesus.
Yeah, he's going to be so crucial for their Champions League run as well. So definitely keeping him fit will be important for Arsenal. And then the final potential replacement that we've got here is Rasmus Højlund. Played a solid 8 minutes more than Jesus so far this season. Obviously playing the first game for United against Arsenal. Obviously came on, looked quite lively. Nothing too much more than that, to be honest. There wasn't too much to show, obviously, in that game. A tough game for United against Arsenal. Fixtures coming forward, though, playing some really, really poor defences in the league. We've seen Brighton concede in every game so far this season. Burnley as well. Brentford, a decent defence. Sheffield United away. So there's some good fixtures to target if you're looking at Man United attackers. Is this a wait and see, Ben, similar with Isak? Or would you just hop on now and just think, Bruno Fernandes creating chances? Is this the time to go with it?
Yeah, I think he will be nailed on at striker at Manchester United going forward. They just don't have enough options up top or any other alternative decent options up top to go with. So if you do think that Højlund is going to hit the ground running, I definitely think you should go earlier rather than later on him. For me, I'm a little bit more unsure just because I'm already on a triple up on United. So I wouldn't sort of justify bringing him in over a Rashford or a Bruno Fernandes. But if you do have one space and you do sort of look at the fixtures, Manchester United does stand out and Højlund also does. We know he's not the most prolific of strikers in sort of his career, but Manchester United and in his career, he's never had a creator like Bruno Fernandes to play with. So we could see Højlund's output massively increase. I know it's a small sample size, 23 minutes, but 0.33 XG in 23 minutes is really, really good against a top quality team in Arsenal. So for me, I'm probably waiting and seeing. But if you are thinking Højlund could do well, I'd probably hop on earlier rather than later.
Yeah, I definitely see his ownership increase. And then talking about United attackers, we're going to speak about their fixture run going forward because a lot of people are attempting to sell Bruno Fernandes, Rashford. They've dropped in price so far this season. However, United do go on a really, really nice run. We're going to take a look at Bruno Fernandes here. As I mentioned, Brighton at home. United at Old Trafford are unbeaten in, I think, over 30 games so far at the moment under Ten Hag, which is really, really good. And they seem to just ground out results like we saw against Nottingham Forest. They're scoring goals at home as well. So these home fixtures, 3 of the home fixtures in the next 5 are probably the more harder fixtures there. And then your 2 away fixtures are the easier fixtures against the promoted sides. I think it's going to be lots of goals in this United attack going forward if they can keep those key players fit. Bruno Fernandes, Ben, we've been sort of harping on about him so far this season. Really, really good numbers. Sort of seen a couple of returns, obviously, against Forest. Is there more to come?
Yeah, I definitely think there's more to come here from Bruno Fernandes. 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 XG and a 0.76 XA. It's quite ridiculous, really. He probably should have double the amount of returns that he's had this season. But I do think that United team is still yet to click into its proper gear and really start moving forwards attacking. But as soon as that happens, I think Højlund could be one of the pieces that makes that happen. And I think United will score quite a lot of goals. 8.4 million. I think Bruno is probably the best Manchester United asset going forwards to look at in terms of consistent returns rather than explosive sort of high amount of points in the game. I think Bruno Fernandes will consistently get a good amount of points going through this nice fixture run.
Yeah, 100%. And then obviously someone that you own, Marcus Rashford's got his first goal of the season at the weekend against Arsenal. Really well taken finish. Playing out on the left wing, he's obviously got 3 returns in 2 games since moving to left wing. We know that's his best position. And I think we'll see him play there a lot more now that Rasmus Højlund should be fit and ready to go. Obviously, Højlund playing for Denmark as well on international duty, which would be a good indication of how he plays as that sort of main focus, because that's what he is in that Denmark attack. What's your thoughts on him been so far this season, Ben Rashford? Are you happy paying 9 million for him? Or are you like looking at the likes of Son or players around that price and thinking you could get better value elsewhere?
I mean, for the fixture run Manchester United have, and the fact that Rashford has moved out to the left suggests to me that I'm happy holding him for now. And the fixture run's too good to ignore. And Rashford is so good off the left as well. All of those returns that you've got on there have come from the left-hand side. He's been fantastic in that position. I anticipate that continuing for the foreseeable future. Brighton, like you said, not very good defensively, tend to push up high line. I think Rashford could be a ready-made game for him. And yeah, I do think if you've got him, hold him. If you've not got him, I think, is there a possibility you could get away of not owning him? I think you could.
So we ran a poll on Instagram and asking you guys what you want help with, what sort of decisions to make over this international break. And a lot of you guys are looking for a new goalkeeper, it seems, whether you be on the wild card or not. First of all, we're going to give a little piece of advice is that we probably wouldn't recommend a goalkeeper transfer unless you absolutely need to make one, because that position in FPL is quite a low point scoring position, tends to be lower than defenders, lower than midfielders and lower than attackers. So it's not a priority position to move, is it, Ben?
No, the point ceiling, like I said, is pretty low, and the amount that you can make in any given week from a keeper transfer is always the lowest out of any position. You're more than likely going to make up points if you transfer in defenders, midfielders, and attackers who have the potential to score goals, get assists, get clean sheets on top of everything else. So yeah, in our recommendation, it's probably not ideal for you to transfer out a keeper. Like I said, the only reason I would is if you're on a wild card or something similar.
Yeah, so if you are on a wild card, here are a few options that we would recommend or just want to talk about in the first place. So Andre Onana, he is both mine and Ben's goalkeeper at the moment. Obviously, 1 clean sheet so far in the opening game week against Wolves. Obviously got a massive, I think it was a 9-pointer in the end, which was pretty lucky because obviously he wiped out that Wolves player at the end of the game, which they should have had a penalty for, but didn't. 15 saves, 7 goals conceded. United have conceded quite a lot of goals. Obviously, defensively, United had quite a few injuries as well so far this season. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think he's worth the £5 million price tag, or do you think it's just better to move the money elsewhere now?
I mean, I'd almost be tempted to move the money elsewhere just because he hasn't performed over the last 3 game weeks. But we can see that there is Hull scoring ability here with Onana, and I think you've got to be aware of that. And a lot of the time, you know, with Manchester United, especially early on the season, I think they're going to be pretty frustrating to own in terms of defensive assets, just because they're gelling together as a team. They've lost players to injuries and that sort of thing. So it may take a little longer than usual for them to sort of get up to speed and start keeping clean sheets. I think the likelihood is that at home, they shouldn't really concede to many teams at all. So if you're looking over the next few fixtures, they've got a few home games in there. Maybe they will concede against Brighton, but those other 2 games, they shouldn't do. But the saves and the point scoring ability from the saves as well, I think he's a good pickup. I do think there are potentially better options at a cheaper value, which is what you've got to bear in mind here. If you're looking and you've got like sort of 0.5 spare, I'd maybe look at him. But if you're looking for a budget keeper, potentially, I'd maybe steer clear and try and save and put your money elsewhere.
Yeah, so a few more cheaper options we'll run through now. Obviously, one of the cheapest is Alphonse Areola, 4.1 million at the moment. Started all 4 games for West Ham. The cheapest keeper you can pretty much pick up, who's definitely a starter at the moment. Obviously, he's 28% owned. West Ham yet to keep a clean sheet so far this season. Obviously, that fixture run is pretty horrific. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think you could maybe go with him and Turner and just sort of ride it out? But obviously, Turner with there's a new signing at Forest in goal now with the Benfica former number one. It's a bit risky, surely, right?
Yeah, it is. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have Areola as your second keeper at 4.1 and then go for a 4.5 million pound keeper as your sort of starter. And to be honest, you could probably rotate in and out Areola for those nice fixtures. Like Sheffield United at home is nice. And then going on, you're looking at sort of from game weeks 11, 12 onwards, where there's the fixtures start clearing up a bit from the Cities, Liverpools, and Newcastles of the world. So I see no reason why you wouldn't have him in as your backup keeper right now. We didn't obviously there was doubts at the start of the season whether he was going to start. He's starting. He's number one right now, and I don't see that really changing. So if you're looking at a backup keeper here, I think Areola is the guy to go for.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Emi Martinez is next up, 4.9 million. Aston Villa have been interesting defensively. Obviously, had the injury to Tyrone Mings, and they sort of switch it about a little bit back there with Konsa playing a 5-back as well, with Matty Cash playing right wing. Martinez, obviously 1 clean sheet, 11 saves, so not as much save potentially here. 8 goals conceded, so they're massively, well, not massively, but a little bit over conceding more than what their XG is saying. Do you think the run's there, Ben, or do you think it's a little bit too pricey?
Yeah, I'd say maybe it is a little bit pricey, but I would also then say Aston Villa have looked pretty decent against poor teams, but against the better teams, they've looked really, really bad and conceded a lot of goals. So I maybe would steer clear of Martinez, because if you're paying 4.9, you're probably looking at set and forget with your keeper. And if you're putting him in for, say, a Newcastle or a Liverpool, Aston Villa just conceded a load of goals, but it's the way that they're playing is the reason why they're conceding those goals. So I'd maybe steer clear of him. If you're looking to use him and Areola and potentially rotate in and out, I maybe would look somewhat at doing that. But again, I'd probably be a bit put off by the tough fixtures. I think Villa concede more than 1 goal each time. But that's just how sort of the trends of the early season have gone.
Yeah, definitely agree. Mark Flecken as well. Probably my favourite option personally. I think Brentford have looked quite good defensively so far this season, only conceding 4.5 XGA, conceding 5 goals, only the 1 clean sheet, which I think is probably a bit disappointing from a Brentford owner's point of view. I think they probably deserve to keep more clean sheets. Flecken has found himself in the bonus, though, whilst they conceded a goal. So there's that whole potential there as well. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think obviously pre-season, a lot of people were turned off by him with the errors that he was making in terms of in the build-up and stuff like that? Do you think he is now the go-to keeper, just sort of 4.5, him and Areola, you can have a sort of switch around with those two?
Yeah, I think he's one of the best keepers to own really here. In terms of like defenses in the league, Brentford are a top 3 in the league for XG conceded so far. So I definitely look towards them. Their fixture run is decent as well. They've got a couple of tough fixtures in their next 5, but overall, I think the fixture they got coming up, even the tough ones, I think there's save potential in there for him and potential to get save points. So in terms of a standout option, I'd say Flecken is probably the standout keeper option to go for if you're on a wild card. He's got a high point ceiling for a keeper, and even his sort of minimum amount of points he's getting, that's slightly raising because of the amount of saves that he's producing.
Yeah. Moving on then, so we're going to talk about defenders as well that you need to be buying right now. There's a few names that have sort of cropped up at the start of the season that maybe some players don't have. So starting off, it's going to be Destiny Udogie. Started the season really, really well. Obviously, got that 12-pointer. He's had a couple of 5-pointers in there with a clean sheet and an assist in either side of that 12-pointer. Spurs defensively so far, I think they've probably overperformed a little bit. I don't think anyone really expected them to keep 2 clean sheets out of their first 4 games. Obviously, especially that United at home one. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, he's playing super, super high up the field when they have possession. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very impressed by Doji to start the season. Again, with the Spurs assets, it's difficult because they've got a really nice fixture at home to Sheffield United and then a couple of tough ones. So if you can afford to bench him in game week 6 and 7, if your squad is deep enough to be able to bench him 6 and 7, then maybe look at moving towards him. If not, game week 8 onwards is absolutely fine to buy him. And I think he still is great value, even if you buy him at, say, 5 million come the game week 8 deadline. I still think that's good value for a Doji. He's sort of producing similar outputs to what we're seeing from Estepinian, to what we saw last season from Luke Shaw, to what we see from even someone like Kieran Trippier in terms of chance creation and being high up the pitch. So I do think he is great value. And those who brought him in at 4.5 are probably likely to have a quite a high team value come game week 8 at least. So yeah, I'd say Destiny Udogie is a good pick to go for.
Yeah, and then someone a little bit more pricier. Obviously, we spoke about Newcastle's defensive assets last week. Kieran Trippier, 6.5 million. Obviously, no clean sheets in their first 4 and no goal involvements. Obviously, we did mention earlier about the fixtures that Newcastle had. Really, really tough start to the season. This is now when it sort of breaks out, and I think we'll see a little bit better from Kieran Trippier and that Newcastle defence. 6.5 million, Ben. Do you think that is too expensive for Trippier? Do you think maybe saving the money with Botman or Shah is probably maybe the better choice?
Yeah, it's difficult really because I think Kieran Trippier is still sort of an attacking threat in this Newcastle team. And the stats have actually, if you're looking at expected goal involvement, that's actually not too bad considering the teams that they've been playing at the start of the season. Yeah, Botman at 4.4 million, probably a little bit more appealing for me. The fixtures are really nice coming up. And I probably think that, saving that sort of 2 million now difference between the two of them could benefit you massively to invest in your midfield and attack.
Then our final defender that we think you should be looking at in going ahead from game week 5 onwards is Matty Cash. Obviously, got those 2 goals against Burnley, a huge 17-pointer haul. Owners back down to reality against Liverpool when he scored that own goal in game week 4. With Matty Cash, obviously playing as almost like a right wing, right midfielder in that sort of back 5 system that we've seen a little bit, especially against Liverpool, for example. I think he had to get moved back to right back due to an injury as well in that game. So I think there is massive haul potential here with him. Obviously, 2 goals shows that against Burnley. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think he's worth taking a punt on? Obviously, 4.6 million, really, really cheap option, right?
Yes, so I think Matty Cash is a high risk, but yet high reward player. He has a very sort of low baseline of potential points. Like he could, as we've seen, Villa got smashed a couple of times by decent teams this season, but he also has potential to score goals as well. So I think it's whether you think it's worth taking the risk to bring him in. Obviously, he scored the 2 goals in one game, but his sort of expected goal involvement is in the best or one of the best in the league. So I do think even for game weeks 5 and 7, if you're looking to bring him in and play him for those 2 fixtures out of the 5, and again, you've got a strong bench, I think it's definitely worth consideration to bring cash in just for those 2 fixtures over the next 5.
So they are our deadline dilemmas. Let us know what yours are in the comments down below. And by all means, we'll start replying to those. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe as well to the FPL graduates. And
as usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.